This area here that we're at, especially under that church, is traditionally, and perhaps with certain amount of archaeological evidence, known as the house of Caiaphas. That's where we're at. The church over here is known as St. Peter in Galincantu. And that means St. Peter of the Cock Crow. Look at the, above the tree, the weather vane on top. What's it shaped like? It's a rooster. So, having arrested him, they led him, Jesus, and brought him to the high priest's house. But Peter followed at a distance. Now, when they had kindled a fire in the midst of the courtyard and sat down together, Peter sat among them, and a certain servant girl, seeing him as he sat by the fire, looked intently at him and said, "This man is with him also." But he denied him, saying, "Woman, I do not know him." And after a little while, another saw him and said, "You also are of them." But Peter said, "Man, I am not." And then after about an hour had passed, another confidently affirmed, "Surely this fellow was with him, for he's a Galilean," because he has that Galilean accent, you see. But Peter said, "Man, I do not know what you are saying." And immediately while he was still speaking, the rooster crowed, and the Lord turned and looked at Peter. And then Peter remembered the word of the Lord, how he had said to him before the rooster crows, "You will deny me 3 times." So Peter went out and wept bitterly. This happened around here. Now I'm going to give you an alternative location where this could have happened. But you got to remember also that the Bible also tells us in one of the other accounts that before Jesus came to Caiaphas' house, he was taken to Annas, the high priest's house. And remember, Annas was an extremely corrupt man. He was put in office by the Romans. He was a Sadducee. Caiaphas was a Sadducee. But the booths that were up on the Temple Mount over there at the Solomon's Colonnade, where Jesus goes up twice, once at the beginning of his ministry, 3 years later at the end of his ministry, and he tips over the tables, runs the guys out. One time he makes a whip and drives them off the Temple Mount because they were keeping people from enjoying fellowship with God, which is what God wanted. Well, those booths were put up there by Annas. It was the Sadducees. They're naturalists. Remember, they don't believe in heaven, they don't believe in hell, they don't believe in angels, they do believe in God, but that's it. They figured once you're dead, you're food for the worms. That's about it. So what does it matter what we do to the people? In effect, they were sort of spiritual relativists. They just said, it doesn't matter what we do. So the booths were called the booths of Annas. That was their sort of the derogatory name that people put them, because Annas allowed them up there. So the first place Jesus goes is to Annas' house. They put him on a few kangaroo courts, hold him prisoner in that place, and then they ship him off to Caiaphas' house. This is believed to be by most Christians traditionally, kind of like the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, believed to be Caiaphas' house. And there is a certain amount of evidence that this was definitely a high priest's house. It was not just a priest, but a high priest's house. Annas' house, however, and before we get to, yeah, go ahead, ask a question.
What about the other high priestly house where you visited?
Yes. Okay, good. You just got to where I was going. The big house that we went to, the Roman mansion that we went to, that was the national park, that was also a priest's house, probably a high priest's house. Could have been a retired high priest's house. But there is a theory, and there's no evidence to support it one way or the other, but because of the magnitude of the house and having that huge meeting room in it, it could have been either Annas' or Caiaphas' house because of the magnitude of that building. So there are multiple possibilities here. This is as good a place as any, but chances are between you going over and visiting that house, coming to this one, and where I'm going to take you next, you will have hit the right location at one of those places or somewhere along that road. So again, one more spectacular biblical site where we can say, yeah, it happened around here somewhere, but chances are where you're walking, it happened right under your feet. This is a site where traditionally it was held. Peter comes into the high priest's courtyard and he denies Jesus 3 times, and the rooster crows and he goes out and weeps bitterly. It wasn't until Jesus had breakfast with him on the Sea of Galilee and broke bread with him, remember in John chapter 21, that Peter began to understand the reconciliation that Jesus was making for him, between him and himself, because what Peter had done was ghastly. So, and he knew it. And the Lord still wanted him back. Listen, the Lord still wants you back. Remember, he died for losers, not winners. He wants to break bread with people who are especially estranged from him, because he wants you back. He wants us all back. You guys are in Bible college. You're going to go into some form of ministry, again, whether it's very personal or very big, it doesn't matter. But the fact is, Satan's going to try and destroy you, and he's going to try and make you think that no matter what it is that you've done, God will never take you back. I have to say, unfortunately, the church is trying to make that point, that God will never take you back and that you're not welcome anymore. But listen to Jesus, and listen to what he did with Peter, and look at the effort that he went to spend that time with Peter, that he saw the resurrection, and they met. We don't know what happened there. All it says is that it happened. And then later, go tell Peter. And then later on, days later, weeks later, Peter, because Peter was the most despondent of the bunch because of his denial. And there's a lot of times where I have just backed away from the Lord because it was too uncomfortable. Oh my goodness, somebody's going to put me down or shame me because I'm associated with Jesus, especially in my younger Christian life. And I think, Lord, I feel like Peter. And the Lord says, yeah, I know. Let's have some bread. Psalm 88. O Lord my God, by day I cry out. At night I clamor in your presence. Let my prayer come before you. Incline your ear to my call for help. For my soul is surfeited with troubles, and all my life draws near to the netherworld. I am numbered with those who go down to the pit. I am a man without strength. My couch is among the dead, like the slain who lie in the grave, whom you remember no longer and who are cut off from your care. You have plunged me into the bottomless pit, into the dark abyss. Upon me your wrath lies heavily, and with all your billows you overwhelm me. You have taken my friends away from me. You have made me an abomination to them. I am imprisoned. I cannot escape. My eyes have grown dim through affliction. Daily I call upon you, O Lord. To you I stretch out my hands. Will you work wonders for the dead? Will the shades arise? Will the shades arise to give you thanks? Do they declare your kindness in the grave, your faithfulness among those who have perished? Are your wonders made known in the darkness, or your justice in the land of oblivion? But I, O Lord, cry out to you. With my morning prayer, I wait upon you. Why, O Lord, do you reject me? Why hide me from your face? I am afflicted and in agony from my youth. I am dazed with the burden of your dread. Your furies have swept over me. Your terrors have cut me off. They encompass me like the water all day. On all sides they close in upon me. Companion and neighbor you have taken from me. My only friend is darkness. That Psalm 88 is the most dismal psalm in the entire book of Psalms. But prophetically, it may speak of Jesus in this particular, not only condition that you read here, but if this was Caiaphas' house, in this place. Because this is the inner like dungeon, where there is a high likelihood that if this was Caiaphas' house, then this is where Jesus would have been. It's not like he carved his name on the wall saying, I was here. But the fact is that this is sort of the innermost dungeon in this particular place. And they did have rooms like that. In the Herodian mansion where we were, up there in the Jewish quarter, there were rooms like this there as well. So this was a common thing. So if this really was Caiaphas' house, and there's a lot of people that think it was, how do you prove it? Really hard to do, but it's hard to prove it's not because of how popular it was way, way back, even before the Byzantines got here. That this may be the place where Jesus was imprisoned during his kangaroo court trials. After he came from Annas' house, they would have put him here. So welcome to St. Peter and God Country. It's real quiet, isn't it? Makes you think. Because if it wasn't here, this is a very, very old place, and it's just like the place where the couple lived.